Welcome back. This is really going to be fun, and it probably is my last video, famous last words, but it's called What Was, What If, and What Is, covering 3 stages of my life, which maybe I'm the only person interested in, but just in case, I'm doing it anyway. So here goes. Let's start with the first part, what was. When I was very young, I was an excellent surf guitarist, but the Beatles came in and spoiled all that for me. So I remember being in the studio with my band one evening, and my band asked me very politely to maybe go sit this one out, the tune we were playing, and go to the control room and sit with the engineer. So I sat with Tim Ramsey, my friend at Audio Recorders of Arizona, which was the wonderful studio that basically taught me much of what I knew at that time. And the moment I sat down on the other side of the glass in the control room with Tim, I had an epiphany. A big light bulb went off, and I knew that was where I belonged. Not with the musicians in the studio playing, but in the control room with the engineer producing. I even had kind of a vision that this was going to be a fabulously successful future for me doing this, which astounded me because I'd never had any kind of premonition before. So I was working with Ray Cork, a very talented arranger from Phoenix, who did some outstanding work, perhaps in our first couple of years together, the best work that I had ever been around before or after. And an artist by the name of Ronnie David, who I produced in Phoenix, went to New York and met with Don Berkheimer, head of A&R for RCA East Coast, and came back. Ronnie came back, called me, and I said, "Hey, did you get a deal?" And he said, "No, but they want to talk to you." I said, "Why do they want to talk to me?" He says, "Don wants to know who the young kid is that made these records for me. He wants you to call him first and apply to RCA West Coast for a production job." Well, I was a junior in college at the time, and I was much too young to go throw it all away and go to Los Angeles, so I never called RCA West Coast, but I did call Don, and he introduced himself and was really, really complimentary about what Ray and I had done. In the meantime, a year later, I was offered a job by Liberace's manager, Seymour Geller. And I was considering quitting college at that point. The Vietnam War was raging, but I was exempt due to a low thyroid, believe it or not. And so one night I'm at the Playboy Club in Phoenix, and my best friend Johnny Guthrie was the drummer for the jazz trio there. And there was a psychic in the main room. His name was Dr. Richard Ireland. And I stood at the back of the room because I wasn't a paying customer. And Richard Ireland had these bandages all over his eyes and then blindfolds. And he was reading, Lord knows how he did that, the little strips of paper that the audience members had submitted to him. Well, I was kind of fascinated. I had never been around anything like that in my life. And I was just getting ready to leave. And he said, "John." I thought, well, it can't be me because I didn't submit a ticket. And he said, "No, John Florez, by the way, everyth's okay with Cy, but it will take longer than you think." Well, Cy was Seymour Heller, and Cy was his nickname known to his best friends. And nobody knew about this job. And certainly Dr. Richard Ireland didn't, but I thought, isn't that odd? So I don't know, a month later, I'm back up at the Playboy Club, and Richard Ireland is there again performing in the main room. So on the band's break, I stood in the doorway again, but this time I submitted a ticket. And I said, "What's happening with my job in LA?" And I'm getting ready to leave again because the band's going to start. And he says, "John," he said, "change of plans. You're not going to be working for Psy. You're going to be working for a major label in LA. It's going to be a meeting with 2 older guys, and you're going to be hired, and you're going to start work October 25th of 1968. I thought, yeah, right. I don't know anybody over there, and I know I was supposed to call over there a year ago, but I wasn't ready, so I didn't. So we'll just take this with a grain of salt. And oh my goodness, here I am in Los Angeles producing a session on my own dime for a local Phoenix singer by the name of Vic Caesar, and I get a call the next morning in my motel room from Ben Barrett, who's an older guy, offering to introduce me to Joe Reisman, the head of RCA A&R West Coast. When I go to that meeting, here are the two older guys that Dr. Ireland was talking about, and Joe Reisman says, oh my goodness, John Florez, and he opens his desk drawer and he pulls out a sheet of paper. And when he pulled out the sheet of paper, he said, see, you're number 2 on our list. And I said, for hire? And he said, yes, weren't you supposed to call here a year ago? Don Berkheimer said you were going to call and come over for an interview. And I said, oh, Joe, I wasn't ready. And now I am. And I started working for RCA on September 25th in Los Angeles. I called Dr. Ireland in Phoenix and I said, you said October 25th. And he said, John, what do you want? He was right. What did I want? So there I was doing my thing. Well, we're talking still what was. What was based on signing the Friends of Distinction and having a couple gold records right out of the box at age 22, 23, that I gained a reputation in the business as the white boy who made mocha mix music. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. When Joe had interviewed me for the job, I said I wanted to do stuff like the Fifth Dimension did. And here I was doing it. Well, after I left RCA, a little bit down the line, I had also produced 5 Flights Up and had 3 chart records with them for Talent Associates. And I had worked with the Hughes Corporation with Freedom for the Stallion and Rock the Boat. I also produced Ronnie Dyson for CBS for free. And people thought I was nuts. But guess what happened? Harvey Cooper, my partner, said to CBS New York, if you love his work on Ronnie Dyson, we'd like you to offer him the next Johnny Mathis album. And they did, and I earned 6 figures off of that album, having done Ronnie Dyson for them for free. So just, I don't know, here we are, present day, the idea came to me, who else would I have produced for free? I asked Motown if they'd let me produce Thelma Houston, who hadn't had a hit yet, for free for them, and they laughed me because you just don't do that. And little did they know it was kind of my passive-aggressive way of getting in the door and doing something great on one artist and maybe being offered more, whether on that label or another label. So they turned me down, but who would I, in retrospect, have done for free? The Friends of Distinction, Willie Hutch, Ronnie Dyson, and the Fifth Dimension. Everybody else, and I enjoyed working with my artists more than you can possibly imagine, I would like to be paid for. Those projects that I just mentioned were so special that I would have done them for free. Okay, now we're at What If. What If is really kind of fun because my career, I believe, was shortchanged due to some just amazing happenings, some within my control, some outside of my control. But after leaving RCA and having had my gold records with the Friends of Distinction, I was working with 5 Flights Up and we had 3 great singles. One was Do What You Want to Do, which was a major hit for them. And the next 2, After the Feeling Is Gone and Like Monday Follows Sunday, which is a Lambert and Potter tune, were sensational. I'm not patting myself on the back, they just came out great. And the last 2 were much higher energy than Do What You Want to Do.
So you just do what you wanna do. 'Cause when I get tired of playing the fool, after the feeling is gone, where you want me, will I still want you, baby? After the feeling is gone, like Monday follows Sunday. Gonna love you not for one
The what if is, what if Eddie Rosenblatt hadn't left Talent Associates as head of sales and promotion for the label that we were on with Five Flights Up? Only with Eddie there were we capable of getting these records promoted. So what if Eddie had stayed, I believe Five Flights Up would have been a major act. Also, what if I had signed Five Flights Up to RCA because I discovered them at RCA? When I was working for RCA, I just decided to leave the label and take them with me unsigned. Morally, I feel nowadays that I'm obligated, or I should have been obligated, to sign them at RCA where I found them. Could they have been successful at RCA? That's a big what if. But at least we had a major company with a major promotion staff that would have been promoting Five Flights Up. Who knows? What if? Okay, let's move on to Linda Seals. Linda Seals, it took me 3 sessions, 3 different rhythm sections and then orchestrations that were added to them to finally get it right. And we did a great single on a remake of Angel of the Morning. The deal is that Bell Records at that very moment decided to drop Talent Associates and stop releasing and promoting their product. So basically, Linda Seals' Angel of the Morning was without a label that had distribution. We will never know what could have happened had that contract maybe been dropped a year later and Linda's record had come out. Let's see, what if? So we just finished with Linda Seals. Let's go to Carl Graves. Carl Graves, we had a hit together called Baby Hang Up the Phone, written by Lefty Podrosky and Patrick Manis. That was on A&M, and it got quite a bit of play and sold well, and they asked us to do an album, and we did. And the follow-up single was a bomb. In fact, I heard it on the air driving down the road. I heard it on the radio with my wife sitting in the other seat, and we heard it sandwiched between a couple of other tunes that were big hit records. And I turned to Carol and I said, oh God, it's a turkey. It's a bomb. The follow-up is a bomb. And I didn't know it till I heard it between a couple of other big hits. So that's how out of it I was. But the fact is we potentially had more releases to do with Carl, and instead the label shelved the album and we moved on. That's really a shame. As I mentioned in other videos, A&M did not have a good R&B promotion staff. So unless it was super pop, we were going to be in trouble anyway. Another what if. The reason that The Fifth Dimension's No Love in the Room, which was also written by McManus and Podrosky, did not become the big hit it was starting to become, with Bullets rising up the charts, etc., is because Clive Davis intervened, didn't get along with the group, so he pulled it and the album from the record stores and he dropped the group. What if? What if that hadn't happened? What if the Fifth Dimension had sucked up a little more to him? What if I had placated him a little bit? This did not happen. But what if Clive hadn't intervened and dropped the group? You see, I was hired to make the Fifth a little hipper than what Bones Howe had been producing on them. Now, Bones Howe with Age of Aquarius, I mean, that was Record of the Year, Grammy Award winner. This is great stuff, but they were getting known for the most part in later releases to be singing Laura Nyro written kind of, and I hate to say this, almost sappy ballads. Bill, I Love You So, I got the Wedding Bell Blues, I've got one less egg to fry, lyrics like that. So we cut Harlem, which was a Bill Withers tune, and the other two that were singles, or should have been singles, the second one anyway. No Love in the Room is about problems within the family. And in this case, you could easily say problems within this black family.
Sitting round the table watching each other, feeling kinda sorry for my baby brother. There's no love in the room.
second one was hardcore poetry about the streets of the ghetto and acknowledging where you came from.
This is a song, not necessarily sweet. I pass it on to people that I never will meet. And if my words don't make it story, just call it hardcore poetry.
This is much along the lines of Freedom for the Stallion, Freedom for Her Mare and Her Colt, that I did as the first single for the Hughes Corporation.
Freedom for the stallion, freedom for the mare and her colt, freedom for the baby child who has not grown old enough to vote. Mercy, what you gonna do?
I wanted to make special records, and I wanted them to be able to say something. Similar to the exclusive I had on an unreleased song, He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother, which I wanted the Friends of Distinction to sing a few years prior. Okay, so we succeeded with the assignment that Clive gave us, which was to become more contemporary. But because of his relationship with the group, he dropped them, and a big what if would be, what if he hadn't? Okay, last but not least, let's move to Freda Payne. Freda Payne, Bruce Miller, her talented arranger, the most talented I had worked with since Ray Cork. Everybody else was kind of, as Perry Botkin, my dear lifelong friend and arranger, said, we're all kind of writing within the same box. The big name arrangers in LA were doing that. And he said, one guy who isn't is Ray Cork, your guy. And that was true for Bruce Miller, who was just breaking in at the time, and now he's legendary. He's still doing it. Like David Foster, he's had a 40-year career. So the combination of Freda Payne, Bruce Miller, and John Florez produced an album that should have been absolutely stunning, very marketable, and Freda just sang her ass off.
I'll take you home tonight, my love. Yeah. Loving you's as good as looking at you.
However, Dr. Cecil Hale, the head of Black Product for Capitol Records, he mixed the album, and it is unlistenable. In fact, Bruce Miller and I got drunk one day on margaritas over having invested 90 days in that project and not being able to even put it on and listen to it. The mixes were so bad. Freda didn't know that really until later, because it sounded acceptable to her. But I don't know, a couple years later, I sent her the rough mixes that I created for us when she finished her final vocals and when I turned the tapes over to Capitol for Dr. Hale to mix them. And when I sent the tape of the rough mixes to Freda, I got a response saying, oh my God, I had no idea. Well, it was a really good album. What if I were able to have mixed that with Dr. Hale, or even preferably without him? But if I had been able to do that, could we have been more successful? Because it was a really nice product. What if? I don't know. Okay, final chapter, what is? What is that back in 1984, I knew that it was about over for me. So for the next couple of years, I looked for a way out, a new way of making a living. So what happened was that I ended up taking a job at Computerland in Glendale, California as a computer sales guy. And I knew nothing. I learned from scratch, and I thought that this was going to be a temporary career. It wasn't. 32 years, I'm still doing it. I'm still supporting people now, mostly remotely, with remote software, so I don't have to travel to go fix stuff. And I'm still training people. And then I'm proctoring water exams for Gateway Community College here in Phoenix. But what triggered all of this and what gave me some perspective on all of it was when my ex-wife, Mary Mather, said to me, John, you've had tons of therapy, but you have no spirituality whatsoever. Yes, you're a good human being and you act kindly toward others and you try to do the right thing, but you have not looked into this area the same way you've looked into introspection. So that started a multi-decade, just her planting that seed, started a multi-decade look into what's it all about. And I found through multiple disciplines, workshops, books, sessions, healing sessions, all kinds of stuff. I went the whole gamut just trying to find out more about who I was and who we are. And I got to a place, well, let me backtrack for 1 second. Back in the Mary Mathers days, she had a psychic at her house one day, a woman who was her age, and they were social friends, whatever. I was sitting in the other room, and the psychic said to Mary, she said, you know, your life path, Mary, is different than John's. And I'm sitting in the other room overhearing this. Says, John's just looking to find himself and find serenity. And even then, bing, the light bulb went up, and I thought, you know, that is what I'm seeking. That is what I'm doing. So it took till I was age 67 to get there. And I got to the point where living in the now, not trying to make things happen, always having to sell a project, sell an idea, do something, it occurred to me, oh my goodness, I have been helping people with their computer issues for decades now. I thought this was going to be a temporary job. Oh my. And I remember walking into Freddie DeMann's office, I believe it was Freddie, and showing him on a, this is mid-80s, on a compact laptop, they called them then, or a portable computer. Boy, this was archaic. And showing him software, and he said, John, I can pop this thing up that you're showing me, and it can dial my contacts. It can remind me of my schedule. It allows me to take notes on everything I'm doing. This is just sensational. And I thought, you know, Dr. Sager, I am being of service now. I am doing something meaningful. Freddie DeMann is more interested in how I can improve his daily life through technology than saying, I got a new act for you. Because he's got hundreds of people submitting new acts to him, and this was true for everybody else too. So in retrospect, I've spent 32 years in service and reached a place where I am serene. I am very, very seldom stressed. For the most part, I believe in basically what my parents taught me, and that was just go out, smile at the Circle K people, be as good a person as you can, clean up the restroom floors when there are paper towels all over them at work, put chairs back at tables, do whatever you can to be a good human being. And the sense of serenity is wonderful. I feel like I am a better person than the person who produced records in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. I live humbly. I have no enemies that I'm aware of. I have lost an incredible amount of friends. I've lost 12 of my core friends in 15 years. That's really amazing. And yet, I feel like they're still with me. In fact, I occasionally talk out loud to them whether they can hear me or not. So, I think I'm a better person now. There is one professional project I want to do musically. And I haven't wanted to do a music project in over 30 years. And I won't go into the specifics because that's private, but I would love more than anything to work with the British singer Lulu. I believe she's one of the finest singers on the planet, and she so outperforms what she was doing when she was younger and is so much more soulful, and all the dues she has paid in her life show that I really want to find some way to work with her. That would just be wonderful for me. I am supremely blessed. I don't have a formal religion. I just have a sense of connection to a power greater than myself. And I did not have that in my youth. So that's a look at what was, what if, and what is. And thanks for listening and watching. Take care.